You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me on socials at SamLittle44 and the podcast at Maple Footy Pod. And now there's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, and welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. And today is a bit of a cool one. As you can see, I'm wearing my Canada Men's National Team 2022's finest, our beautiful black kit. And why are you wearing your 2022 finest, is what I hear you asking. It's because today we're doing a retrospective look at our 2022 squad and where are they now. I thought it would be really cool to do something like this just because the World Cup is on the horizon. Hype is slowly starting to build. We're in February. We're kicking off very soon. And it would be really cool to see kind of where the squad's at, what's changed, what they've done in their careers, both with the national team and with club level. So I just thought it'd be quite fun and something that I find interesting and hope that you also share the same sentiment. So we're going to start this with some notable absences. I'm not going to name every single player ever that's represented Canada that was still playing during 2022, but there were some notable absences at the time. And now there were a couple friendlies that we did play, of course, leading up to the World Cup. So I'm mainly sticking with the friendlies before the World Cup. So guys that could have been at the World Cup, but for whatever reason, were not chosen. So guys like Charles Andreas Brim, Jaden Nelson, Theo Corbeanu, Raheem Edwards, Io Akinola, Zachary Broguillard, and Mathieu Choinière were all called up in around that time for Canada, but just didn't make the World Cup squad. Some of those guys I do think have a shot at making this World Cup squad. I mean, look at Mathieu Choinière and Jaden Nelson, pending health, knock on wood. I do expect definitely Choinière to be there, and I think Nelson's very much in contention to be at 2026. Now, there were guys that did miss out on the World Cup through injuries and the like, so we will start off with a few guys that missed out that were going to get a bit more of a mention. We're going to kind of tell you why they kind of missed out, and I think, if we could see them at this upcoming World Cup. So, of course, famously, Maxime Crepeau missed out on the 2022 World Cup. Most likely would have been our number 2 heading into the tournament, as he was during that time for World Cup qualification. And when Bourgeon wasn't playing, it was mainly Maxime Crepeau that was getting a lot of the nods for Canada at that time. So just weeks before the World Cup, Maxime Crepeau was playing in the MLS Cup final with LAFC. And during a play, he came out. He was literally the last line of defense, if you will. I can't remember which player he made the play on, but in essence, he makes a huge play, but literally breaks his leg in the process, meaning that his World Cup was done, which is a shame because I do think, even though I don't see him most likely playing during the World Cup, he still would have been a great presence to have in the locker room. So I do think that regardless of him playing or not, he was still missed at this World Cup. And I do think maybe had he have been at the World Cup, he may have featured in our third match against Morocco. That maybe he wouldn't have. I don't know. But currently, Maxime Crepeau just left the Portland Timbers, and having signed with Orlando City FC in the MLS, Maxime Crepeau is still fighting to be Canada's number 1 goalkeeper with Dane St. Clair. But Crepeau has been insane for Canada every time he's played. Let's be real. That Copa America run was special. He was phenomenal. Earned the name around these parts as the Canadian Buffon, and I think lives up to it pretty much every time he puts on the red for Canada. But yeah, Maxime Crepeau, I do see him most likely, pending health, at least being at the World Cup. If I had it my way, he would be our starting goalkeeper at this World Cup. But yeah, he's either going to be our number 1 or number 2, once again, pending any injuries, knocking on wood there. Moving to some defenders that did miss out. Scott Kennedy. Bet you haven't heard that name in a while if you don't keep up with the Maple Footy Podcast and with just Canadian soccer to that level. But Scott Kennedy was a semi-regular for Canada during the 2022 run, and he actually started our 4-0 win over Jamaica, where we did officially qualify for the World Cup. But Another one that went down just weeks before the World Cup with a shoulder injury at the time was playing in the second tier of Germany. And currently he's with Eupen in the second tier of Belgium. He has 14 caps to his name, and his most recent call-up was the 2023 World Cup. So sadly, I don't see Scott Kennedy being able to get in for this World Cup squad, but I do think had he have been healthy, Scott Kennedy most likely would have been on the plane to Qatar. Daniil Henry, another one that missed out through injury. And this one, it sucks that any of these guys missed the World Cup, but this one really hurt. Daniil Henry, one of Canada's most deserving players to have been at the World Cup. Everything he gave to the Canadian men's national team program, a trailblazer in many aspects, sadly missed out due to injury. Another player who picked up a knock literally weeks before the World Cup started. Henry still came as part of the coaching staff, which I thought was really cool. He definitely deserved to be there in any capacity, so it was great that he still got to do that. He was always a top pro for Canada, both on and off the pitch. He's now since retired from the pro game and played for many notable clubs like TFC in 2 different stints, Vancouver FC, West Ham United, LAFC, and wrapped up with Halifax Wanderers in the CPL. He grabbed himself 44 caps, not too bad for the nation, and since retiring has been working a lot behind the scenes with Simcoe County Rovers and Milton Magic FC. And something that he's also been really open about is players' mental health. He's been a huge proponent of players' mental health, as he himself has opened up about missing the World Cup and the toll that can kind of take on you and the mental health aspects that come with being a pro athlete. So he is still out there doing some amazing work. Daniil Henry is just always such a great champion for Canada. And most recently, of course, was a part of the coaching staff for Canada versus Guatemala. So I'm always going to be a fan of Daniil Henry. Absolutely loved him. Another defender that missed out, Lucas McNaughton. And he is one of those guys I could have lumped in at the start when I had said these were just some names that were kind of called up in around this time. And Lucas McNaughton has 1 cap to his name, and it was in a friendly against Bahrain before the World Cup. But I'm putting him here because it did feel like once Daniil Henry and Scott Kennedy had gone down with injuries that we could have seen a Lucas McNaughton come into the World Cup squad, especially getting his first cap just before the World Cup. So you're thinking maybe he could. Of course, it didn't work out that way. I am a fan of Lucas McNaughton. I do think that he is a very steady MLS center back. Currently just finished up with DC United. At the time was playing with TFC during 2022, and now there are rumors swirling that he could be on trial with St. Louis SC in the MLS. I think that'd be a pretty good move for him. So hoping that Lucas McNaughton does get that shout, does get that call from St. Louis, and maybe, one day, maybe we see him rep at Canada again. But yeah, I was always a McNaughton fan. A midfielder that missed out on this tournament was actually retired internationally during this tournament. He made 19 caps for Canada. That is, of course, Scotty Arfield. And a few of them actually came as captain. He stopped getting called up in 2019, though. Then in 2022, officially announced his international retirement. I'm putting him here, though, because during the time of the World Cup, there was some chatter that maybe Scott Arfield would have come out of international retirement to play with the men's national team at the World Cup. It didn't work out that way. He's now 37, playing in Scotland after stints with Charlotte, Rangers, and Burnley. He's playing with Livingston right now. Some attackers that missed out. Jacob Schaffelberg, at the time a young up-and-coming winger with TFC, and was slowly earning some national team recognition. It wouldn't be until the 2023 Gold Cup where it felt like Schaffelberg became a proper call-up for Canada basically anytime he was healthy. Then at the 2024 Copa, as we know, Schaffelberg blew up, and since then has had a stint in Nashville, and just this past transfer window was transferred to LAFC. And I do think, pending once again, health, I think that we can say that Schaffelberg will most likely be at the 2026 World Cup. As far as our coach goes, John Herdman. We're going to keep this one brief. But yeah, of course, during his time with the men's national team program, me and I think a lot of other people were big fans of him. And then, of course, Dronegate has since happened, the 2022 World Cup. He was managing TFC at the time, now finding himself with the Indonesia national team. And I do think that, people laughed when he said he wanted to build a Canadian program, and now look at what he's done. if you're Indonesia, I think you're going, okay, we got us a project coach here. So not too bad for John Herdman, but I think it's probably best to leave it pretty brief when it comes to John Herdman. But yeah, now we're going to move into some of the players, well, all the players that represent us at the World Cup. So we're gonna do this in a way of going from their number that they wore instead of positions or alphabetical. So yeah, we're gonna go from 1 to 26. So of course, starting with our number 1, Dane St. Clair, who at the time was playing with Minnesota United. And at this time, it'll probably sound shocking to hear from a 2026 lens, but Dane St. Clair was not a regular call-up to the national team, which kind of feels like a far cry from being the kind of number 1 for Canada right now, and of course the MLS goalkeeper of the year. He did at this tournament serve as our number 2, but signs were there that he could have been our number 1 in years to come, which of course we've now seen that come to fruition. At club level, it was pretty much the same for Dane. He was playing for Minnesota, was their number 1, getting minutes, getting a lot of plaudits around the league. People really liked him, and now of course that has changed. He just this window did leave for Inter Miami in a bid to not only move up the league to challenge for trophies, but of course also to get that number 1 spot locked down for the World Cup. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do this season with Inter Miami. But yeah, we're starting this off with a guy that really, any of his changes come in the last 4 years really just happened in this window, this transfer window. And of course, as I said, he has racked up a few more caps now. He currently sits on 18 caps for Canada. But yeah, Dane St. Clair could be one of those guys that we could be seeing with a much larger role to play at this World Cup coming up, as opposed to the 2022 one. Wearing number 2 was Alistair Johnston of CF Montreal at the time, one of Canada's breakout stars from this tournament, and was absolutely vital to the program during this time. And let's be honest, he still is. But I say this because leading up to and including the 3 games at the World Cup, Alistair Johnston played in 31 straight games for Canada. And during our qualification run, he played a vital role in slotting as a right wing back, a proper right back, and a right side center back of a 3. During the World Cup, he earned praise for being able to go toe-to-toe with some of the absolute best in the world, of course, playing the likes of Croatia, Belgium, and Morocco. So it didn't take long for some of the biggest clubs in the world to start making some proper moves in for him. And in 2022 of December, he was playing with Montreal. Come 2023 January, the first day of the transfer window, he would be transferred to Celtic. So just kind of shows you how quickly he was scooped up by Celtic. Since then, he still plays for Celtic. He has won 3 league titles, 4 domestic trophies, while being nominated for the World 11 in 2024. He's currently battling injury, so Canada will hope that he will be good for the 2026 World Cup, and so will I. I will also be hoping for that because we need Alistair Johnston at this World Cup. But currently for Canada, he does sit on 56 caps for his nation. Reppin' the number 3 was none other than Sam Adekubi, who at the time was playing with Hatayspor FC in Turkey. A staple of the national team at this time. Of course, you may know him as the guy that jumped into the snowbank during that iconic game against Mexico leading up to the World Cup, but he was so much more than that. He was so crucial to the program, especially in the absence of Alphonso Davies during a lot of those qualifiers. It was Sam Adekubi that was the starting left back leading up to the World Cup in many games. So yeah, it just shows that he was properly involved in this qualification run and at the World Cup as well. He featured in all 3 of our games, coming off the bench in the first 2 and starting the last one at the World Cup. Since then, he has struggled with injury and hasn't been a sure thing call-up for Canada, which kind of does suck, but it is through no fault of his own. Injuries do, of course, happen, as we well know. He was, after the World Cup, loaned to Galatasaray, where he became a Turkish champion. Now he plays with the Vancouver Whitecaps and has won 2 Canadian championships. And he's currently coming back from an Achilles injury that he suffered with Canada in 2025. It is up in the air whether he will be at this World Cup. I'm a big fan of Adekubi, so I do hope he is. But also at the same time, if he's not, ready fitness-wise or what have you, I don't want him to risk his career for the World Cup, but of course, player, coach, all of them know far more than me. And I'm also not in the position to go, well, I want to play at a World Cup where Sam Adekubi might be. So if it comes down to, you know what, maybe I'm not 100% fit, but I think I can go. At that point, it's up to the player, the coach, the fitness staff, what have you. But at the moment, for the national team, he does sit on 44 caps. Wearing the number 4 at this tournament was my number 4, Kamal Miller, who at the time was playing for CF Montreal. Another one of, in my opinion, Canada's top performers at the World Cup. He started all 3 games in the World Cup and even famously squared up to a Ballon d'Or winner named Luka Modric. During this time period, Kamal Miller was one of Canada's most crucial defenders and one that Herman trusted a lot. He rarely ever didn't start and finish a match. Now under Jesse Marsch, he's no longer a guaranteed call-up, which, if I'm going to put in my 2 cents, I do think is a mistake. I know that there are people that would disagree with that. But hey, you know, that's my opinion, and he's my center back, so I'm always going to back my center back. In 2022, of course, Kamal Miller was playing for CF Montreal. Then a few months after the World Cup, he joined Inter Miami, where he played for a season. Now plays with Portland Timbers, having captained the side on occasion. He also boosts a Leagues Cup, and a Canadian Championship to his name since the 2022 World Cup. I think Kamal is on the bubble for a call-up. Last World Cup, he felt like a pretty well guaranteed call-up, as he was one of our number 1 center backs. Now, with the congestion in there, I'm not super sure if we can expect Kamal Miller to be there, especially with Jesse Marsch not seeming to be the biggest fan of Kamal, which, as I said, is a mistake. But I don't get to choose a team now, do I? But currently, at the moment, he does sit on 51 caps for Canada. The man who wore number 5, Steven Vittoria, who at the time was playing with GD Chavez, and streets will not forget that partnership between Kamal Miller and Steven Vittoria. What a duo that was during that qualification run. Truly, I thought they actually played very well together. Vittoria was a bit of a late boomer with the men's national team, making his debut at the age of 29. And it was really during that 21 to 22 era where he really stepped up and became not just a crucial member of the squad, but a proper leader that we could call one of the captains, even if he wasn't wearing the armband. And now, of course, during the 2022 World Cup, there was no doubt Steven Vittoria was going and most likely starting for Canada. He just was that crucial to us. And at club level, Vittoria was quite the journeyman, having played in Portugal with various sides, Porto, Benfica, Chavez. And since I have written this script, actually, I had to make this adjustment today before recording this. Vittoria has actually announced his retirement from the game of soccer, which, hey, he did have a brilliant career, both at club level and the international level. So let me read off some of the things that he did win at the club level. So he retires with some trophies in his cabinet: one-time Portuguese champ, one-time Portuguese Cup winner, a one-time Portuguese League winner, and one-time Polish Cup winner. He was always dependable and always rock steady for Canada. And as I said on Twitter, if you follow Maple Footy over on Twitter, in my opinion, I don't think we get to that World Cup without him playing as good as he did, because he really was just super crucial at that time for Canada. But yeah, Steven Vittoria retires from the national team, from the sport at club level in general. And in my opinion, this term probably gets thrown around a lot, but for me, I would put him up there as maybe a men's national team legend at this moment in time, just because of what he did during, even if you look at that 2-year spell of 21 and 22, he was immense for Canada. And yeah, he was so good. He retires on 46 caps for his country. Wearing the number 6 at this World Cup was none other than Montreal's captain, Samuel Piette. And is Samuel Piette the most disrespected player in Canadian men's national team history? Because I genuinely think there is a case for it. I've always been a fan of Piette, and as many people know, I do actually think that there should still be a place for him in this national team setup. But in and around 2021, he continued getting called up, but saw his minutes and games really go down. That includes at the World Cup itself, where he famously didn't see the pitch. He even said after the tournament that he puts an asterisk over the tournament as he didn't play and was disappointed on a personal level. But of course, the team does come first. But yeah, he was disappointed on a personal level, which is more than understandable. A guy of his caliber to not even get a singular minute at the World Cup is a little bit of a slap in the face, especially during that third place game, which you'll probably hear me say a lot for any of the guys that didn't play at this tournament. That third place game could have been used to shuffle the entire team, to get some guys on that hadn't played. But since this World Cup, Samuel Piette still plays and captains CF Montreal, where he's their all-time appearance leader with 235 appearances as of recording, and has won 2 Canadian championships. His last call-up was during the Copa America under Jesse Marsh and has not been called up since. And at the moment, 2026 just does not feel in the cards for him, sadly. But currently, he does sit on 69 caps for Canada. Wearing our number 7, Stefan Eustáquio, who played at Porto at the time, one of the players who was very much a crucial part of the 2022 qualification run and the World Cup itself. He started a game against Belgium where he showed Kevin De Bruyne levels in that game, and then played the first 45 against Croatia, where he came off through injury, and that ended his World Cup run. Eustáquio still shows his class and quality when he plays for Canada, and has always been super outspoken to support the Canadian game, whether it's a CPL, the men's national team program, the women's national team. He is just such a great proponent for Canada as a whole, and I'm just so glad that we have a player like him. At club level, he is of course still with Porto, but minutes have been hard to come by for some reason for him. I don't know why. I don't know if the manager just doesn't see him as that kind of guy, which I think is baffling. But hey, every manager sees it differently, I suppose. And I'm not even a manager. I'm a guy with a camera and a microphone. So, there is that. But during his time at Porto, he has won a number of trophies with them, a league title, in total 6 domestic cup competitions, as well as a 2023 Canadian men's national team player of the year. Currently rumored that he will be heading to LAFC in the MLS. Watch the moment I upload this. It will be confirmed that he's gone to LAFC, but as of right now, nothing has been confirmed. So I will still say he does still technically play with Porto, even though I'm sure that announcement is imminent, and I will rue it when it comes out, inevitably the day that I post this. But I do see him being at the World Cup as long as he is healthy, most likely starting as well. If we're being honest, he's the current vice captain of the team and currently has 54 caps to his name. Wearing the number 8 for Canada at this tournament was none other than Liam Fraser, who at the time was playing with Deinzer, a player who I've always been a fan of from breaking out through a TFC and everything he's done since then. So I was happy to see him get the call up for this tournament. He's another player who sadly didn't get any minutes, and I think probably should have at this tournament, like I've said, especially during that third match. Always a bit of an underrated player in my opinion, and I don't really think ever got his due, both at club level and at the international level. And may we never forget that brilliant ball he played to Jonathan David against Honduras that led to one of David's finest ever Canadian men's national team goals. Since 2022, Fraser has bounced around a little bit to a few different clubs. He's enjoyed stints with Dallas, Crawley Town, and now Reading in the third tier of England. While it would be great to see Fraser back with the setup and back with Canada, I just don't believe that we just have the time for him to reestablish himself in the national team in between now and the World Cup. So sadly, I don't see him being at the 2026 World Cup. And currently his last call-up came in 2024, and he sits on 19 caps for Canada. Our number 9 at the World Cup, Lucas Cavallini, who at the time was playing with the Vancouver Whitecaps. And let's be real here, Lucas Cavallini was an absolute dog. Loved Cavallini. I thought he was just so good. I think it speaks to his talent that he was getting into the Canada squad and starting 11s in an era of prime Kyle Larin and Jonathan David. I always loved how he played. He was just so direct, used his body well, did a lot of work off the ball and did a lot of dirty work and could convert his chances, something that we struggle with now, which, hopefully we can make amends for going forward. Since 2022, he's left the Whitecaps after a decent spell with them as a DP. He is now back in Mexico, where he's had success in the past. He's playing with Puebla FC, but has had terrible luck with injuries over the last 2 seasons, back-to-back ACL injuries. Absolutely brutal. Some guys just literally cannot catch a break, and Lucas Cavallini seems to sadly be one of them. His last call-up for Canada came at the 2023 World Cup, and while I do think that a healthy Cavallini, in theory, could actually step on the pitch at the 2026 World Cup, especially with our goal-scoring troubles, I just don't think it's in the cards. During the 22 World Cup, he played the final 10 minutes against Belgium, so at least was one of those guys that did get to play at the World Cup and will forever be able to say that he played for his country at the World Cup. He currently sits on 40 caps, and 19 goals, so not a bad conversion rate for him. And yeah, genuinely a player, if I think he could stay healthy, we could have seen him at this World Cup. But yeah, not meant to be, I don't think, for Lucas Cavallini, but still, what a dog he was for the Canadian men's national team. Wearing our number 10 at the World Cup was Unk himself, Junior Hoilett with Reading FC. I always loved and still do love Junior Hoilett because he's just such a unique player, especially in the Canadian men's national team program. He's creative, good on set pieces, loves a big moment and banging in a goal from 30 yards out. Now has that veteran respect and leadership for the team. During the 2022 build-up for the World Cup, Hoilett was huge for us, showcasing his talents basically every chance he got, and scored, of course, in that game against Jamaica, where we did secure qualification for the World Cup. During the World Cup, he featured in all 3 of our group stage game matches, starting against Belgium and Morocco, while playing the last 28 minutes against Croatia. At the time, he was playing for Reading in the championship, having come off a 5-year stint with Cardiff. Once he left Reading, he joined Vancouver Whitecaps for half a season. Remember that? I didn't. I forgot that happened until I was researching for this podcast. So there you go. Now we all remember that Junior Hoilett played for the Vancouver Whitecaps. And of course, since leaving the Whitecaps, has now played for Aberdeen. And as I was writing this, was playing with Hibs in Scotland. But just earlier this week, made a transfer to Swindon Town in the 4th tier of England. Injuries and age have slowly caught up with Junior Hoilett, having missed the Copa America through injury. He's no longer a guaranteed call-up. So that kind of sucks because I actually do think that he could still play for Canada. But at the moment, I'd say he's on the bubble for making this World Cup squad, but I'm not entirely confident that he will at this moment. But regardless, however, he does sit on 68 caps for the Canadian men's national team. Number 11 was none other than Tajon Buchanan, who played at the time for Club Brugge. Now, Tajon's rise was pretty rapid in 2021. He came into the Canada World Cup qualification cycle, then was really given the keys during the Gold Cup of that same year. He truly hasn't looked back, if we're being honest. He used the world stage as a moment to properly announce himself. He started each of Canada's games in the World Cup, so made 3 World Cup appearances, and even grabbed a beautiful assist for Alphonso Davies. Following that World Cup, he even had many suitors, such as Leicester and Napoli, among a few others, but he stayed with Club Brugge for another year, where he would then go to Inter, as we can see, in the Serie A, and he added a Serie A title and a Super Cup to his trophy cabinet, as well as a nice little piece of history, Canadian history, as the first Canadian to ever play in the Serie A. So that is pretty cool too. Playing time at Inter, however, was pretty hard to come by and sparse, and not helped by a broken tibia either. He then joined Villarreal on loan at the start of 2025, and it was a career reborn. He was playing, he was looking good, he grabbed some vital minutes and goal contributions, and the team ended up qualifying for Champions League, and his loan move was then made permanent last summer, and since then he's been flourishing at Villarreal. And potentially the highlight of his career was being named the Maple Footy Men's Player of the Year for 2025. So hang that one in the trophy cabinet as well, Tajon Buchanan. But yeah, as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of Tajon Buchanan, and he was just so good at this World Cup. Another one of our top performers at this World Cup. And pending, health and whatnot, knocking on wood every time I say that. I do expect Tajon Buchanan to be at the 2026 World Cup, and at the moment, he sits on 57 caps for Canada. Number 12 at the World Cup was Ike Ugbo of Troyes AC. The Chelsea Academy product came with a lot of fanfare when he declared for the men's national team. He had a pretty impressive CV, and at the time, Canada were getting closer and closer to the World Cup when he did declare we hadn't officially qualified. He made his Canada debut in late 2021, but things never really took off for Ugbo in the red, whether it was behind David, Larin, and Cavallini in the pecking order, or only ever starting 2 games for the country. Things just didn't take off. He was on the bench for all 3 of our World Cup games and didn't see a minute. He now plays for Sheffield Wednesday in the championship. His last call-up was in Marsh's first 2 friendlies. He was as well invited to the Copa America, but didn't come. As Jesse Marsh noted, it was due to personal reasons that he declined the invitation and has not been called up since. I don't believe we will be seeing him at the World Cup for Canada, either based on form, not having scored a league goal in a season and a half now, or the fact that we just have a plethora of strikers at the moment. So for Ike Ugbo, I just don't see it happening for him in the 2026 World Cup. Now, number 13, the legendary Atiba Hutchinson, who at the time played for Besiktas, one of Canada's greatest ever players, and the case can be made that he is the greatest ever player. And at this point, he didn't have many games left in those legs going into the World Cup, and I think it's forgotten that he was coming off an injury at this time. And during that 2021 to 2022 era, Atiba almost felt like he was hitting a new gear with the national team, even though we sadly knew that it was coming to an end. No longer did he have to do too much. He had help around him, which he hadn't seen during his national team career, really, for the most part. When he was coming up, there wasn't much of a program. But, of course, during the latter end of that career, he did have the help, and it was no longer just Atiba. It was Atiba and a lot of other guys. At the World Cup, he was the only member of the squad who was alive during Canada's first World Cup appearance. After everything Atiba gave to the Canadian game, it was only fitting that he led the boys out as the captain of our team going into this tournament. He featured in all 3 games, starting against Belgium and Croatia, then coming off the bench against Morocco, where he was inches away from scoring for Canada. Darn crossbar. And in 2023, he officially hung up his boots after the Canadian men's national team loss in the Nations League final against the States. His career was, of course, literally incredible. There isn't a whole ton. You honestly can't really say how important he was. He just was that important for Canada. Without a player like him, I don't think our program is anywhere near where it is now. His trophy cabinet is also something that is quite special, especially for a Canadian player that played his career in Europe. We don't see cabinets like this. A 5-time Canada Men's National Team Player of the Year, Danish League Player of the Year, 4-time Danish League champion, 3-time Turkish League champion. Just incredible. And since retirement, he's wrote a book, is now a Simcoe County shareholder and international career that stretched 21 years from October 15th, 2002 to June 19th, 2023. He ended his international career as the one and only Canadian men's player that has over 100 caps or 100 caps at all. He ended with 104 for the Canadian men's national team, and Atiba, man, I still miss him. He was the GOAT. But yeah, hoping that he's enjoying retirement though. Wearing the number 14 was Mark Anthony Kaye, who at the time was playing for TFC. He had just finished his first half season with TFC, which at the time when he came in felt like a massive get for the club. He was, of course, still a pretty big part of the Canadian men's national team, a pretty constant call-up and a solid option to have, whether he could start a game or come on and help see it out. He endeared himself to Canadian fans as well for being known as one of the most passionate guys in the squad, whether it was belting out the anthem or just never stopping on the pitch. During the World Cup, I'm very glad that he did get to step on the pitch for one of his actually final appearances for the national team at this moment. But still, after everything he had done, he more than deserved to be playing against Morocco in the group stage, starting it and going for about an hour. Following the World Cup, there was a pretty public falling out between Mark Anthony Kaye and John Herdman, which led to Kaye not being called up a whole lot following the World Cup. Midway through 2023, nearly a year to the day after he signed with TFC, K would leave TFC and head to New England. Following that, San Jose, where he did pretty well, now currently out of contract, and it's unknown what's next for Mark-Anthony Kaye. Away from the pitch, he has been pretty outspoken about mental health as well, following the different debacles that he has had. And his last cap did come in 2023, which means I doubt we see Mark-Anthony Kaye at the World Cup, but currently he does sit on 42 caps for Canada. Our number 15, Ishmael Kone, who was at the time playing for CF Montreal and was barely 20 when this World Cup rolled around. And this was truly the year that put him on the map, both at club level with Montreal and at the international level with Canada. At club level, between making his debut for Montreal and making his debut for Canada was a month. That just shows how quickly his rise was and how much Herdman had recognized, you know what, maybe we should give this guy a shot at the international level. And to Kone's credit, he took that shot and ran with it. Then, of course, getting called up to the World Cup, where he featured in all 3 of Canada's games. Since that World Cup, Kone has become a crucial part to the Canadian men's national team and has had himself some pretty big moments, whether it was that friendly against France where we saw him absolutely boss in midfield of Conte, Griezmann, playing against the likes of Mbappe, and it was Ishmael Kone that left the pitch looking like the best player on it. That's my GOAT. That's MVP right there. And then, of course, in the Copa America, scored the penalty to send Canada through to the next round against Venezuela. Potentially the best penalty I've ever seen. Potentially, maybe it was. And then, of course, since the 2022 World Cup, has played for the likes of Watford. Then, following the Copa America, played kind of for Marseille. We don't talk about that, though. Then had a quick loan with Rennes, and now he's currently playing in Serie A with Sassuolo, where that move was just made permanent over this last week. So very happy for Ishmael Kone finding his footing there and is really building on consistency. Looking at 2026, there just is no world where a healthy Ishmael Kone misses out on this World Cup. He's too crucial to the team, one of our best players, and currently sits on 2 Young Player of the Year awards for a national team and 37 caps for his country. Wearing the number 16 was James Pantemis, who at the time played for CF Montreal. Perhaps the man who was brought in to be our third choice after Crépeau had went out through injury. And both of these keepers are truly linked, aren't they? It feels like you can't talk about either one of them without talking about the other. But Pantemis was one of 2 former CPL boys who were representing the country and the league on the biggest stage. At the time, Pantemis was a semi-frequent call-up, but it wasn't until January of this year where he finally made his Canada debut. Crazy that we have a keeper that is as talented as Pantemis, and it was only just this January where he made his debut after years of call-ups. But regardless, in his club career has left CF Montreal, and in 2024 landed at Portland Timbers, where he and Crépeau, that name again, would battle for the number 1 shirt. Ahead of this MLS season, it does look like that number 1 shirt is his after Crépeau has left. So it looks like Pantemis will be getting that nod in between the sticks. I do think for the World Cup wise, there is a chance that we do see Pantemis as Canada's third choice goalkeeper at this World Cup. Of course, I think that position is a little bit congested, but Pantemis has to be one of the top picks to be our third choice keeper at this World Cup. Currently for Canada, he sits on that 1 cap against Guatemala, and hopefully he does have more to come. Wearing the number 17 for Canada, Kyle Larin at Club Bruges at the time. And for over a decade now, Kyle Larin has been a part of the national team program. And it was around 21, 22 where he may have been the most crucial he has ever been for the national team. During the World Cup qualification run, he scored 13 goals in 16 games. That's how crucial Kyle Larin was at this time. He was that guy. He was him. This was the time where it felt like every international window, our top goal scorer spot was switching between him and Jonathan David. At the World Cup itself, Kyle Larin appeared in all 3 games, starting 2 for Canada and coming off the bench against Belgium. Since the World Cup, Larin at club level has bounced around to a few sides. Of course, Club Brugge, Mallorca, and was, when I was writing this, with Feyenoord, but has since been transferred to Southampton on loan for the remainder of the season in the championship. At the international level, he's not seen as crucial or as influential as he once was. That's a combination of age and other strikers coming up. His future for Canada remains a little bit unknown, in my opinion, of whether or not he's going to the World Cup. I still think that he could potentially find his way at the World Cup, and I do still think that of the strikers that Jonathan David has played with, we haven't seen him play better than with anybody other than Kyle Larin. That's my opinion. I know other people may disagree with that. But currently for Canada, he does sit on 87 caps and 30 goals and is Canada's second all-time leading goal scorer on the men's side. Number 18 at this World Cup, Milan Borjan, who at the time was playing for Red Star Belgrade. And it may have been those glorious sweatpants he wore or the power of just locking in and putting World Cup hopes on his back. But in 2020 to 2022, Borjan for Canada looked unreal. And I think there's a case to be made that without him, Canada do not go to that World Cup. He was, in my opinion, that vital during that qualification window. For Canada, he played all 3 group games at the World Cup, even wearing the armband in the final one until Atiba Hutchinson did come in. After that, he remained Canada's number 1, excluding about 2 matches until November of 2023. So still was in the plans for a little time after the World Cup. After that, though, he has not been called up. At club level, he remained at Red Star Belgrade until 2024, excluding a season-long loan. He currently plays for and captains Al Rayya in Saudi, so he's playing against the likes of Ronaldo and Sadio Mane every week. So, hey, still not the worst spot to be. Whilst not being officially retired at the international level for all intents and purposes, he is. I don't see him being at the 2026 World Cup, especially with the goalkeeping competition right now. But it just goes to show how crucial he was during that 2-year spell. He was just so insane. But currently, he sits on 80 caps for his country. Wearing the number 19 for Canada at this World Cup was none other than Alphonso Davies, who was playing for Bayern at the time. And even though he's one of the highest profile Canadian athletes out there, one of the biggest names in just world football, the most notable name on the men's side of Canada, at least in our program, not much has changed in the world of Alphonso Davies. He's still crucial at Bayern, still one of the best left backs in the world. And although last year he did miss a good portion of it through ACL injury, he's back and looking good again. Even with Canada, the only thing that's really changed is he's got the captain's armband now, officially being named our national team captain. So much has not changed in the world of Alphonso Davies that we still have the debate of if he should be a left back or a left winger in the year of 2026. Just goes to show you some things truly never change, as the old adage goes. But leading up to the 2022 World Cup, Alphonso Davies had some scary injuries and moments leading up to the World Cup. Earlier in the year, he had been diagnosed with heart problems, which kept him sidelined for a little bit. Then, literal weeks before the World Cup, he had torn muscle fiber in what I believe was his knee, putting his World Cup in jeopardy. But let's be real, Alphonso Davies was just too crucial and too important and too good for Canada to miss this World Cup. If he even had 0.5% in the tank to give, I truly believe he would have still been on the plane to Qatar. He started and played in all 3 matches at the World Cup. In the first game, of course, he did miss that penalty against Belgium, but then in the second group game, when we were playing Croatia, he scored against them, our first ever World Cup goal, and the quickest goal at the 2022 World Cup, scoring it in just 68 seconds. So, hey, we left that tournament with something, and probably the most have ever celebrated a goal. Iconic. I still get chills anytime I rewatch that goal. I truly, truly love that. Since then, though, as noted, there isn't much more to be said about Fonzie. He's played a lot and has won a lot of trophies with Bayern Munich before and since 2022. It is wild to think that, without people like Alphonso Davies, Atiba Hutchinson, or Christine St. Clair, where is our program right now, truly, without some of those pillars of the program, past and present. we're just so lucky to have a player of the quality and capabilities of Alphonso Davies. He's just so good, has championed this program in this country so well, has helped it grow in just so many ways. And I don't think that we may ever see someone as good or as important as Alphonso Davies for this program. Truly, he is that big of a presence in this program. Looking at the 2026 World Cup, as I just mentioned for the 2022 World Cup, if he even has 0.5% to give, I think he'll be at the World Cup. I just don't see him missing this World Cup as long as he's healthy enough to be there. Currently sits on 58 caps for the country, and hopefully there will be many, many more to come for Davies. Donning the number 20 at the 2022 World Cup was Jonathan David, who at the time played for Lille. And during the 2022 World Cup, there were rumors that if a good showing was to be had by Jonathan David, it could solidify him that big summer move that had been on the cards for him for years. So that's really just to show you how long that saga was going on for, as he only just got his big move this past summer. So yeah, that saga was going on for quite some time. But David was truly on the rise during that 21 to 22 era of the national team. As a qualification run, he was super crucial to the program. He grabbed 9 goals and 7 assists in 18 matches during that run. During the World Cup itself, he couldn't quite replicate that form. He would start our first 2 matches of the tournament and then get the final half hour against Morocco in our final game. At club level, since then, he would go on to become Lille's all-time leading goal scorer, being their main man through years until this last summer, where of course he did get that move to Juventus. Momentum has started to pick up for him at Juventus. He started out slow, but is looking like the Jonathan David that we know he can be. On the international front, Jonathan David has been one of the guys for the program in general. He also won the 2024 and 2025 Men's Player of the Year to go along with the one he had already won in 2019. Looking forward to 2026, unless he's hurt, Jonathan David will be starting at the World Cup. He won't just be a part of the squad. He's going to be starting for us as long as he is healthy, of course. Currently, he sits on 73 caps with 37 goals, the program's most in the men's side, at least, in history. Wearing the number 21 at the World Cup was TFC's Jonathan Osorio, the bear of the national team, and now seen as one of the vets in the locker room at both club and international level. And it's no secret, Jonathan Osorio is my absolute favorite Canadian player of all time. I don't even know if you can see the 21 on my shirt, but rest assured, this is a Jonathan Osorio jersey. So I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible, which is very hard for me to do. But over the years, Jonathan Osorio has grown as a competitor and in importance on the pitch. During the 2021-2022 era, he was vital to Canada's qualification run. He played a plethora of roles as well in that run, whether he partnered Eustáquio and Hutchinson in the midfield, played out wide on a number of occasions, or even asked to be the number 10. Let's not forget that iconic goal at the Azteca against Mexico, a performance and moment that made fans go, I think we could actually go to this World Cup, you know. And how about that insane performance in Hamilton against the States when he was in the off season with TFC and the MLS and came and absolutely bossed the midfield against players like Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie. When the World Cup came around, he was actually coming off of a concussion, but he did feature in all 3 of Canada's World Cup games. He came off the bench in the first 2 matches and started the final one. At club level, he's still a one-club man with TFC. He signed a club extension in 2022 following the World Cup, and he's also become the club's all-time leading appearance maker with 395 appearances in all competitions. So he's literally this close to breaking 400 with TFC. In 2024, he also became the club's captain, which I think was fully deserved, and it was the right call. Still a pretty regular call for the national team, but age and other players are starting to catch up with him, mean that 2026 may not be a lock for Oso. I still think, unbiasedly of course, Jonathan Osorio should be at this World Cup, but time will tell if that is the case. Currently, he is one of the most cap members in the active squad at 88 caps for Canada. Wearing the number 22 during 22 was Richie Laryea, who at the time was with TFC, a man whose career could be defined by one word, and that word is resilience. From seemingly being unwanted at Orlando to becoming crucial with TFC, he is another one of those players whose stock rose during that qualification run. He played a good few positions during the qualification run as well, showing his quality to both be able to step in anywhere and do a proper job wherever it was he was stepping in. Something that has become a theme of his career, being the guy that steps in and just does a very good job. At the 2022 World Cup, he would start the first 2 matches and came off the bench in the third. At club level, he's bounced around a little bit from 2022 to 2024, whether it was with Nottingham Forest, back to TFC, then the Vancouver Whitecaps, then back to Forest, then finally permanently back home with TFC. It's been a whirlwind for Richie Laryea, but no matter what club he has been with, he's been a pretty stable call-up for Canada. He's played an integral part with the program over the last number of years and has really become a leader both on and off the pitch, now being one of the vets in the squad. As it stands, as long as he's healthy, I do see him at the 2026 World Cup as well. Currently with Canada, he sits on 72 caps. Wearing the number 23 for Canada, playing for Basel, was Liam Miller. Perhaps it was the 2022 World Cup that led to the foundation that would become the Liam Miller Hive. Maple Footy, of course. During the qualification run, Liam Miller had been in and out of the squad through injury, but thankfully, he would be able to make the World Cup squad and feature in Canada's first game against Belgium at the World Cup, playing 9 minutes where he looked quite bright. Then was never used again in the tournament for some reason that we will never know. But yeah, looked very bright in that 10-minute cameo that he did have against Belgium. On the club front, Liam Miller has been with a few different clubs. After becoming the first Canadian to ever play for Liverpool, he joined Basel, where he developed his game further, and then went back to England by way of Preston on loan, where he gained a lot of recognition and where he seriously impressed. The loan really helped him get into and start a couple games at the Copa America under Jesse Marsch, where a lot of faith was put into him. After his loan move with Preston, he would stay in England by way of Hull City on a permanent basis in the summer of 2024. Since the World Cup, he's been a pretty regular call for Canada, often one of the most bright and exciting players on the pitch. And honestly, as long as he's healthy, I do see him at the World Cup. Of course, Liam Miller is coming off that ACL injury followed by a hamstring injury, but still hasn't really, when he's played, looked like he's missed a beat even with those injuries. So really hoping that we can see a healthy Liam Miller at the World Cup and maybe get more than 9 minutes, which I will still never understand why he was not used again, but I won't harp on about it anymore. Currently, though, Liam Miller sits on 37 caps for Canada. Wearing the number 24 at the World Cup was David Wotherspoon, who at the time was playing for St. Johnstone FC, a player whose World Cup was in doubt. He was unable to play a big part in Canada's qualification run due to an ACL injury. He did, of course, as you can see from this list, made the World Cup squad and even played the final 14 minutes of the tournament against Morocco, a win in itself. I look at it for David Wotherspoon after coming back from an ACL injury, looking like he may not be there, and then, of course, did, in fact, get to step on the pitch at the World Cup. At club level in 2023, he left St. Johnstone for Inverness. Then he would go to Dundee United in 2024, spending a year there until he left there, and has since rejoined Inverness, where he is currently working on his A license in coaching, which is pretty awesome. He feels like the type of player to have the coach's mind, just the way he plays. I don't know, some players you can just like look and go, I could see them being a coach, and David Wotherspoon is 100% one of those guys. And fun fact for you, he also follows Maple Footy on Twitter, so that's pretty cool. His last call-up came in 2023 during the World Cup, where he currently sits on 13 caps for Canada. Number 25 was Derek Cornelius of Panathinaikos. One of the most underrated players in the current Canada squad, was given a new lease of life under Jesse Marsch when he came in. But we do not forget that he was a regular call-up for Canada during a qualification run, even though he was pretty underused at the time. He was an unused sub at the World Cup throughout all 3 matches. At club level, he'd leave Panathinaikos once his loan move expired. He'd spend the next year and a half at Malmo, where he'd pick up 3 trophies along the way there. In 2024, he'd move to Marseille, and then in 2025, move out to Rangers on loan. I had said he had gotten a new lease of life for Canada under Jesse Marsh, and I think that is true. Cornelius is one of the most trusted players under Jesse Marsh. Whenever he's healthy, he is starting for Canada at the moment, and he has shown, especially in the 2024 Copa America, how quality he can really be, and he really hasn't looked back since. Looking forward to the 2026 World Cup, as long as Cornelius is healthy, I do think he'll be going to his second World Cup, and hopefully as a starter as well. Currently for Canada, he sits on 40 caps. And last but not least, wearing the number 26 at the World Cup was Joel Waterman, who at the time was playing for CF Montreal. Our other CPL alum in the squad for the World Cup was Joel Waterman. At the time, he had 2 caps to his name, both of them coming in the friendlies right before the tournament as well. During the World Cup, Waterman would be an unused sub in all 3 matches. But since the World Cup at club level, Joel Waterman has been a steady center back for Montreal and in the MLS in general, where he'd rack up 125 appearances for Montreal in all comps. This past summer, he would leave the club and leave Canada as a whole for the first time in his professional career, going to Chicago Fire, where he's been pretty good for them as well. For country, he's been a regular call-up and has been a guy that Jesse Marsh can really call upon when needed. I do think that if he's healthy, we will be seeing Joel Waterman at the 2026 World Cup, potentially in the same kind of role that he has been as the guy that we will call and use if one of our, say, Bombito or Cornelius does go out. But yeah, Joel Waterman at the moment sitting on 15 caps for Canada. But that does wrap up this episode of the Maple Footy podcast. I do hope that you did enjoy it. It is, of course, quite the long one. A lot of players to talk about, a lot of stuff to kind of delve into. I hope you enjoyed it. It took me a long time to research all this stuff and, of course, get this going and whatnot. So I hope that you enjoyed. Let me know who you think of these guys could and should be at the World Cup. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just drop it down below. Let's get some conversation going, But other than that, more episodes will be on the way. As I said, I hope you enjoyed this. Listen to us everywhere. If the visuals isn't quite your style, we're available on audio platforms everywhere. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff, linked down below as well if you're listening to this on YouTube. And outside of that, I hope that you have a great rest of your week. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates. Remember to support Canadian football, be kind, and until next time, live, laugh, little.